Hello and welcome to another Coding with Kyle session. And we're going to go ahead and look at some of the 5th and 6th grade project features for their video games in Scratch. The first one on my list is Aiden. And Aiden's feature is the final boss. He did a good job figuring out that this is going to be a sprite that he's going to have to make. And some of the logic steps are attack the player. Now here, we can break these logic steps down a little further. So the final boss is going to have to move towards the player. It's going to sense where the player, well, it'll sense where the player is, move towards the player, then try and attack the player. If the player is not within range of the attack, then the attack will miss, and if it is in range, the attack will hit. So those are kind of the 4 to 5 logic steps there. We're going to go ahead and look at this in Scratch now, and I'm going to go ahead and create a new program. And okay, so here we have our sprite 1. This is going to be our player. And for this feature, we don't need to worry about making our sprite move. We just need to focus on the enemy boss. I'm really tempted to make it Andy, but let's find something else. Let's maybe the evil butterfly. Oh, let's see. What do I want to be a boss? Frank. It's gonna be Frank. All right, Frank, you're the final boss. And Frank's a good guy, by the way. He's a great guy. He just happens to be standing in front of you and your goal. Okay, so Frank is gonna be our final boss. So we need to click on him and put our code in here. And we need to not start him off with when the green flag is clicked. So this is reserved for whenever we start the game. But Frank is a final boss, which means he's going to come in sometime at the end of the game. So what's going to happen is Frank is going to appear whenever we receive a message. And this message is going to be maybe final boss time, because it's going to be time for that final boss. So the first thing we want to do is we want Frank to appear. So we're going to show him. That also means in the backdrop, whenever the game starts, when the green flag is pressed, we want, nope, just kidding. That's not in the backdrop. That's when Frank happens. So whenever the green flag is pressed, we want Frank to be hidden. So we're going to hide Frank when the green flag is pressed, and we're going to make sure we put a stop this script, so that way we don't have any hanging puzzle pieces. So and actually we don't need this there yet. So when I receive this final boss message, Frank is gonna show up. So right now if I click the green flag, he hides away. When I get this message, he's gonna show up and he's gonna need to move towards the player, right? That was one of the first logic steps that we talked about, was moving towards the player. So to do that, you can see this glide thing. So there's several types of movement here. We can turn, we can move, we can go to a position. This will just jump us right there like a teleport. We don't want to do that. Glide is going to mean he's going to constantly move towards a position. Then we can also do the change X by, change Y by stuff. If on the edge, bounce, things like that. So he's going to glide towards the player. And right now it just says glide 1 second towards the player. So he's going to do that for a second. And he's going to have different speeds, different gliding speeds that he moves at. It's kind of random. So what we can do is we need him to keep moving towards the player if he's not already at the player. So if he needs to keep doing something over and over again, that's going to be a loop. And a loop is a type of control structure, right? We're controlling the flow of our program. We want to take this glide 1 second towards player part, and we want to loop over it over and over again. So why not just do it forever? We'll go ahead and do this forever. We'll glide towards the player for a second. We want to give the player a fighting chance though. So after a little bit of time, what we're going to do is we'll glide, and then maybe instead of just always gliding, we'll wait 0.5 seconds before gliding again. Okay, boom, oops, Frank, come on. We'll test that out in a second. But it'll glide towards the player for a second, and then wait 0.5 seconds before doing it again. Okay, so then after Frank, the final boss, glides towards the player, he needs to make an attack. So what he's going to do is he's going to check if he's touching the player. And we're going to use this if, then, and else stuff. And we're just going to put it right inside the loop. So he glides for a second. He waits, and actually we probably want to put this before the waits. And put the waits. All right, so put that here. I'm going to put the wait after. So what this is going to say is we glide for a second, and then he's going to check if he can make an attack. Then he's going to wait 0.5 seconds before moving again. So what's his attack condition going to be? It's going to be if he's touching the player's sprite. So if Frank over here, he's going to sense if he's touching the player. And if he is touching the player, then he's going to make an attack. And this attack, let's give him a look. So this attack is going to be, he's going to jump up to make this attack. We'll do that. So this will be our attack costume, and Frank A is going to be our main costume. So so since we're adding these looks in here, we want to make sure that when I receive the final boss, right before we show him that it's the main Frank, and now if he's touching the player, so he glides a second towards the player. If he's touching the player, he's going to make his attack. And to start his attack, we're going to start it off by showing the player he's making attack by switching it to attack Frank. Attack Frank will wait. Maybe there's going to be a big thing. He's going to wait. Let's say 0.1 seconds, and we're going to do a really cool attack animation here. We're going to have his motion. We're going to make him like jump up like this and then slam back down. So he's going to switch the costume to attack. We're going to wait 0.2 seconds. We're going to switch his costume again. And this looks like he's jumping up. And we're going all out here because this is the final boss. So your other enemies probably aren't going to be quite this many costume switches, but this is a final boss. So we're going to go all out here. So we're going to switch the costume after 0.2 seconds to jump. And then we want him to jump up. So the motion is going to be to change Y by, and a good jump height that I figured out earlier is like 100. We're going to change Y by 100 while he's jumping up. And then we're going to wait again for 0.1 seconds. He's going to hover in the air for 1.1 seconds, and he's going to slam back down. So we're going to make the Y, go to Y, where'd you go? Change Y by, there we go. Oh, wait. There you go, change Y by, and we're going to go back down 100. So he's exactly where he started, so negative 100. And let's look at his costumes real quick. So this is him gearing up for the jump. He jumps up in the air, and then he's going to land back down and slam his fists into the ground. So it's going to be back to the attack costume. So looks, wait 0.5 seconds, and we're going to change back the costume from jump to attack. This is going to be a really cool attack animation here. And then what we need to do is change the player health and actually follow through with that. So player health, this is a value that can change. We're going to need to make a variable for that. So values that change that we need to track across the program, we need a variable. So we have changed the player health, and right after this, we're going to change the player HP to -10 because he's a boss. This is going to be a big attack. So whenever we have a variable, whenever we create a variable, we always need to go to backdrop, and we need to say when green flag is pressed, go to our variables, and we need to set our variable. We always need to set our variables to start with something. So let's give our player 50 HP. This is going to be a big boss fight. He does a lot of damage, so 50 HP is good. And we do want to just tack on that stop this script here. and we can add more stuff to it later. You know what? Let's add more stuff to it now. We probably also want an enemy HP variable, so we'll go ahead and set the enemy HP to maybe 100 because he's a big boss, and we'll drag enemy HP to the right of the screen. So player health is on the left, enemy HP is on the right, and cool. So let's go back to Frank. So right now, let's just go ahead and test what happens. So we start, and we don't receive this message final boss. So I'm going to go ahead and click it to simulate it. Frank moves there, and he does this quick jump motion, this quick jump attack. So if anything, I actually want him to maybe pause in the air a little longer, maybe 0.5 seconds before slamming down. And that will create a really cool, so we click this, boom, does the attack, and then, yeah, it jumps up, he holds a position, and then comes down. But probably right before he comes down, so switch to jump. So he jumps up in the air. We'll wait 0.1 seconds to switch the costume to the attack. Let's just switch 0.2 seconds to switch the costume to attack. And then we'll add another wait right after switching the costume of 0.2 seconds, and that'll cause him to slam back down, and that'll be really cool. So click on that, he moves towards him, boom, that's a really good fluid animation there for Frank attacking the player. So a couple things that we're noticing is that one, the player HP is going down, so that's good, the attack is working. We want to make sure that Frank always starts somewhere. So whenever we receive the final boss, we want to go to motion, and we want Frank to always go to this position, maybe this position over here. So that's going to be, if we drag him to the position we want him, the go to X, Y will automatically be those coordinates. You can see here 221 and 46, which corresponds to those. So he's always going to go to this spot and start gliding. That way he never starts right on top of the player unless the player is over there. Cool. So now if he's not touching the player after gliding for a second, we want him to do something else. So maybe for right now, we'll just say, we'll just have him be intimidating and say, you can't escape me, right? That's kind of a pretty intimidating sentence, and he'll say it for a second. Maybe there's no escape. There's no escape. That's a little bit less words and a little quicker to read. Okay. So now if I hit the green flag, we simulate the final boss message being sent, and we want to, when we send that, we want to go to events, we want to broadcast final boss time. So maybe, what's the trigger for this? We have to decide. Maybe when our score gets above a certain number, whenever we go into a certain room. Whatever the trigger is, having this line of code somewhere is what will trigger all this whole entire block here. So we're going to go ahead and hit the green flag. It resets our health to 50 and 100. We click this to say final boss time, and oops, yeah, final boss time, and boom, he slammed us. And now we're moving away from him, and he's saying there's no escape, even though we escaped him. He's trying to intimidate us. And then now, oh, he got us, and that's 30 health. He moves again, there's no escape. And now we have this thing of moving around. So now we want to work on, oh, and then there he just got us, because he's got a very big area. So he's a very good boss because he's so big, so it's very hard to escape him. He's kind of not lying. There seems to be no escape. So yeah, so that's a good way of doing a final boss. The next steps for the features would be, programming the player to move around to where you can dodge stuff, and then also having a check for if the player HP goes to 0, maybe the backdrop can check every time if the player HP goes to 0, then the game is over, and you need to have some type of end screen. So that's kind of where to go from there. But that is all for this video. And if you like Jake from State Farm, then you can like these videos. So don't forget to like and subscribe.